What's going on, everyone? So Zach Lavine, I still think, is a target that still makes a ton of sense for the Lakers. I wouldn't even be shocked if push comes to shove, the Lakers ultimately make a trade for Zach Lavine. I mean, Zach Lavine could solve, or at least a trade with the Bulls for Zach Lavine could kind of kill multiple birds with one stone, right? Like, you could end up doing a trade to land Zach Lavine. You could end up dumping more salary, because you got to remember, Lakers have to send out more than they can take back, right? So you could trade for just Zach Lavine straight up. The Chicago Bulls are willing to attach assets. They got the 2 second-round picks in the DeMar DeRozan trade that they're trying to attach as, you know, hey, here you go. Thanks for taking Lavine. But I do think with the limited market, I mean, based on reports, there's no market, period. That I think that the Lakers could potentially kind of use that as a leverage point, because you don't have to trade for him, right? And Chicago, like, what is their other options? Like, I've seen people be like, oh, well, you know, they could just send Zach Lavine home. Really? So for the next 2 or 3 years, you're going to pay him essentially out $120 million just to stay home? At that point, you might as well just waive him. You might as well just get rid of him, right? Like, it's silly. They need to get off of Zach Lavine. Now, obviously, it has to be within reason. Like, if you're like, hey, we want all 3 of your firsts, something like that's probably not going to happen. But I do think that you could probably get a first. Maybe you could get another player. Maybe you get a first in a couple seconds or a first in 1 second. Right, if you're kind of the only game in town, you're kind of in that position where you have a lot of leverage, in my opinion. I also think Zach Lavine is the perfect fit and complement that just would slot in seamlessly alongside LeBron James and Anthony Davis. The injury history, I do think, is a little overblown, right? Played 67 games 3 years ago now. Played 77 games 2 years ago now. And last year, yes, no, he only played like 23 games or 25 games or whatever. But he was supposed to finish out the season until the Detroit Piston rumors came along. And then he was like, you know, in the wise words of Austin Reeves, I ain't going to Detroit, right? So how many games would he have played otherwise, right? And yes, there is a risk, there is a concern, but it's about what's available. It's about what's realistic. It's about what, you know, keeps you in that conversation for contention. It's about what is the cost, right? Like, yes, you could go and trade for a Jeremy Grant, right? And I do think Jeremy Grant makes you better. But if you have to give up both your first to do that, now you don't have any leverage to go get anything else, then what's the point? Where, to me, it's like, take a shot on a Zach Lavine, get some assets in return, right? Now, let's say you could get a first. Now you got a first, maybe get a second on top of that. And now you have just more assets that you can now go take to make a move later on down the road, or just for your future, right? Like, you know, like, Lakers want to have this nice little balance. If you can send out more salary, so, you know, Zach Lavine, $43 million, like, D'Lo, Rui Hachimura, and Gabe Vincent right there is 45 or 46 million, right? 46 and some change, right? And then can you convince them to take, you know, say a Cam Reddish, maybe you're giving up like a Jalen Hood-Schifino, and you're doing like a 5-for-1 swap. You clear off, say, 10 million in salary, right? So that way now you're bringing in Zach Lavine. Now you freed up your full mid-level or taxpayer mid-level exception. So now you can bring in, say, a Gary Trent Jr., and then also, you know, bring in a Spencer Dinwiddie and basically fill out your roster. Because you got to remember, the Lakers hard capped, or they would be at the hard cap with only 45,000 in wiggle room, right? So you got to be able to clear off enough salary, yes, to use your taxpayer mid-level, but also be able to work something out to where you can still round out the rest of your roster. So that way you don't get penalized and all that stuff. And you just need roster. But, you know, even then, like, even towards the back end, if you're close, you could always just bring in like a Blake Henson or something like that to kind of fill in the voids. And his, you know, vet minimum is like 900,000. So there's options there. But the biggest thing that people always mention and the concern is his contract, which it is, right? It's pretty hefty. Making 40+ million a year for the next few years. It's not great, but it's only going to get better as time progresses, and here's why. The Lakers, or not the Lakers, but the NBA period, is getting that new TV deal, right? And this is something that I haven't really mentioned much. I've mentioned it like kind of in passing, but not really in some of my, not the way that I should in some of the Zach Lavine videos. So the NBA is finalizing all of their TV deals. What is it, TNT or whatever, are trying to see if they can match or whatever to try to keep inside the NBA, which would be great. But nonetheless, like, the deal's going to kick in not this coming season, but the following season, 2025 through the 2026 season. And to me, the salary cap is only going to continue to increase year in and year out. So yes, $40 million now hurts, but 2 years from now, it's only going to get better. And once that becomes an expiring contract, now it becomes tradable. And then even if you don't trade that contract, now you have $40 million coming off of your books, right? And his contract lines up with LeBron James, lines up with Anthony Davis. I just think that the risk is worth the reward, because you can kind of solve everything you need to solve. You can kind of get through everything you need to get through. You put yourself in a position to where, like I said, you can bring in a Gary Trent, bring in a Spencer Dinwiddie. You get a guy that is a real ceiling raiser and fits perfectly alongside. I mean, Zach Lavine is one of the best catch and shoot players in the league. Like, it's not an exaggeration. So he's a guy that, playing with LeBron, playing with AD, playing in that motion offense, he's a guy that could just go get a bucket, and his ability to just put the ball on the deck, shoot over the top. Like, there's so many things that Zach Lavine would provide and add to the Lakers, and you'd still be fine. Like, people are like, oh, well, he'd kill all of our depth and stuff. Like, but again, if you're giving up, let's say, D'Lo, Rui, Gabe Vincent, right? Let's say Jalen Hood-Schifino and, Cam Reddish, right? Well, Cam Reddish might not and probably should not ever see the court. Jalen Hood-Schifino, I don't think is any loss. I do think he has potential, but I don't think it's really any loss. Your real loss is Gabe Vincent, who didn't even play last year. Rui Hachimura definitely would definitely hurt, and D'Angelo Russell would definitely hurt. But you're replacing those guys with Zach Lavine, potentially replacing them with a Gary Trent Jr., and you can potentially replace D'Lo with, like, say, a Spencer Dinwiddie. So you got your point guard. So you could go like Spencer Dinwiddie with Zach Lavine, or you go Austin Reeves with Zach Lavine. But so let's say you end up with Zach Lavine, Gary Trent Jr., and Spencer Dinwiddie, right? So you got those three. And then you got Austin Reeves, you got LeBron James, Anthony Davis, you got Max Christie, you got Dalton Connect, right? You definitely got to get a backup center, but, can you, now that you got more assets from a Chicago Bulls trade, can you maybe take those assets and flip them to a team like the Utah Jazz and get Walker Kessler? Now you got your backup center, now you got Zach Lavine. Like, I just look at it and I just go, man, like, this could be a real kind of game changer for the Lakers. Is it a risk? Absolutely. But anything that you do is going to be a risk. On top of that, it's like, who else are you getting that's going to be and has the potential to have as big of an impact as Zach Lavine that you're going to get assets for, right? Like, again, Jeremy Grant would be great, but Jeremy Grant by himself isn't going to raise the ceiling enough to where you need it to be. Zach Lavine is an absolute bucket getter. I mean, this is a guy that go get you 50 on any guy. I mean, he only played 25 games last year, 23 games last year, and still had a 50-point game. It's a guy that when he's on, he lights it up with the best of them. So to me, if you can go get Zach Lavine, if you can turn, a couple guys into Zach Lavine, clear off some salary to be able to do everything you need to do, I think that that's the best course of action. But anyway, as always, this is a discussion. Pass a question on you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. What do you think? How do you feel? What are your thoughts? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Do you like the idea of getting Zach Lavine? Do you think, no, still stay away from Zach Lavine? Do you think the TV deal kind of makes it, lessens the blow a little bit? Again, whatever your thoughts are, I'd love to hear it. Let me know down in the comments. That being said, if you haven't liked this video, hit that like button. Helps me a lot. So we enjoy these types of videos, and I truly appreciate it. Not subscribe to the channel, hit that subscribe button. Turn on the bell notifications. Appreciate y'all. See you in the next one. Thank you.